They say the land remembers, that the ground beneath our feet soaks up every scream, every secret, every drop of blood spilled in silence. I never believed in curses, not really. Not until I stepped foot on that old patch of farmland near Red River, Tennessee, the place where it all began. It was the autumn of 1817. The sky hung heavy over the Bell family's property, draped in gray like mourning cloth. There was something wrong with the air. Too still, too quiet, the kind of silence that hums in your bones before something terrible happens. John Bell was a well-known churchgoer, father of 9, prosperous farmer, the kind of man who believed in order, in scripture, in the certainty of a good day's work. But no prayer, no prophet, and no power could save him from what was about to descend upon his family. It started small, the way nightmares often do. At night, strange tapping sounds echoed through the wooden walls of the Bell home, rhythmic, deliberate. At first, they thought it was rats, or maybe the old timbers settling, but the tapping grew louder, closer. And then, one night, it started calling out names. Betsy. The voice was low, gravelly, impossible to locate. It seemed to crawl from the shadows, cling to the corners of the room. Young Betsy Bell, the only daughter, would wake up screaming, her hair yanked by invisible hands, red welts rising on her cheeks. No one saw what hurt her. No one could stop it. At dinner, spoons flew from the table. Chairs scraped backward on their own. And the walls they would breathe. You could hear them inhale, exhale, like the house itself had become alive, hungry. John tried to hide it from the neighbors at first. He didn't want rumors. But how do you hide a ghost that slams doors and whispers scripture in the voice of your dead mother? He that hath ears to hear, let him hear. One night I asked Lucy Bell, John's wife, what she thought it was. She looked at me with hollow eyes and said, "It's not what it is, it's who. And she hates us. She." That's what they all called it eventually. She, as if naming the thing would give it power. Or maybe, because deep down, they already knew who it was. As the days grew shorter and the nights turned cruel, the Bell family's once quiet home became a theater of terror. And all the while, a question pounded in my skull like the tapping on their walls. What did they do to deserve this? Or worse, what if they didn't do anything at all? John Bell wasn't a man easily shaken. He had faced drought, debt, and death before, but none of those things had ever whispered in the dark or dragged their fingernails down his bedroom walls. I remember the first time I met him. He was taller than I expected, with eyes like river stones, cold, steady, unreadable. His handshake was firm, but his hands trembled just after he let go. A farmer's hands, calloused, strong, but something unseen had begun to rot the faith in his grip. He took me to the edge of his cornfield, the one closest to the forest. The crops there were always stunted, twisted, like they grew in pain. "The land ain't right here," he muttered. "Bought it cheap from a man who couldn't sleep anymore." I asked him if he believed the land was cursed. He didn't answer. He just stared into the tree line, where the branches knotted like arthritic fingers. Birds never nested there. Even the wind avoided that part of the woods. There were stories, of course. Folks whispered about a woman named Kate Batts, an eccentric neighbor who had long held a grudge against John. They said he cheated her in a land deal, that she spat at his back and cursed his name in front of witnesses, that before she died, she swore she'd haunt him from the grave. But curses are just stories, right? Except this one came with a voice that knew things no one else could, a voice that mocked John at night, reciting his sins like scripture. It called him a thief, a liar, a hypocrite. It exposed his secrets. It said it had come for judgment. The Bell children refused to sleep. Lucy, his wife, began to fade, her skin pale, her movements slow, as though the weight of the haunting was feeding on her soul. But John tried to fight. He prayed louder, worked harder, even threatened the spirit out loud. I laughed. "You can't plow me out, John Bell," the voice rasped one night. "I'm in the roots. I'm in the dust." I began to wonder then, was the land cursed because of the spirit, or had the land always been cursed, and it simply drew the spirit to it? One afternoon, I found John alone in the barn. He sat on a bale of hay, staring at a noose he had tied from old rope. "Sometimes I think it wants me to do it," he said quietly. "Just one drop of blood, and maybe it'll stop." I didn't know what to say. How do you console a man who's being haunted from the inside out? The land he bought to build a life on had become his graveyard in waiting, and the voice was just getting started. It always starts with knocking. Not loud, not frantic, just 3 soft, deliberate taps, like something testing the surface of your mind, gently chipping away at reason. I stayed the night in the Bell House once, back when they still had enough courage to let outsiders witness what lived in their walls. They gave me the spare room upstairs, the one that used to belong to Betsy, the one where her screams echoed through the floorboards nearly every night. I should have known better. The room smelled faintly of lavender and something else sour, metallic, like old fear soaked into the wood. I lay down on the bed, pulling the thin quilt to my chest. But the mattress beneath me felt weighted, as if someone else had been lying there a moment ago and hadn't quite left. When the lantern went out, the darkness fell too fast, too thick. Then I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp raps against the wall behind my head. I held my breath, listening. Nothing followed. No wind, no footsteps, no voice. Just silence, so heavy it had its own pulse. Then, from the far corner of the room, something whispered. "Are you awake?" The voice was neither male nor female, just too close, too intimate. My skin tightened across my back. I scrambled for the matchbox and struck a light, hand trembling as the small flame flickered against the walls. The room was empty. Of course it was. But the air, God, the air was thick, like it had teeth. Then the scream came from down the hall, high-pitched, raw. "Betsy!" I rushed from the room, the hallway a blur of shadow and panic. When I got to her door, Lucy was already there, holding her daughter's flailing body against the bed. John stood, frozen in the doorway, helpless. Betsy was thrashing, eyes open wide, as if something unseen hovered just above her, pressing down with invisible hands. Then, I saw the scratches. 3 red gashes down the side of her cheek, fresh, swollen, bleeding, as if something had clawed her in her sleep. But there were no fingerprints, no footprints, no intruder. Only the faint sound of laughter, low, guttural, fading down the staircase. "This happens every night," Lucy said, eyes glassy, voice nearly gone. "And every night, it gets bolder." The entity, whatever it truly was, had begun small, knocking, whispering, but now it moved freely. It mimicked voices, opened doors, threw objects across rooms. It wasn't hiding anymore. One evening, it called to Betsy in John's voice. She heard him clearly. "Betsy, come here." She followed the sound to the cellar. The real John was in the field at the time. They found her hours later, huddled in the dirt, rocking back and forth, eyes wide as moonlight, whispering the same word again and again. Eyes, eyes, eyes. After that, no one slept alone. The younger children clung to their mother like barn cats in a thunderstorm. The servants refused to stay past dusk. Even the neighbors, once so certain this was just superstition, stopped visiting. They crossed the road when passing the Bell property. They whispered prayers under their breath. They were afraid. They whispered prayers under their breath. They were afraid. Danger, December 1 part. Pride Road and by the Massa. No one slept alone. The younger children clung to their mother like barn cats in a thunderstorm. They were afraid. After that, no one slept alone. The younger children clung to their mother, and so was I, because I realized something that night. This house wasn't haunted, it was occupied, and whatever lived within its walls had already chosen its victims. I always thought spirits were silent, that they haunted with footsteps and creaking floors, the occasional whisper lost in the wind, but never full voices. Not until Kate spoke. The first time I heard her, I was at the Bell House, seated at the dinner table. The air had gone still, the way it does right before a lightning strike. Every candle flickered, though there wasn't a breeze. And then it came, a voice that sliced through the quiet like a blade through silk. "My name is Kate." It wasn't shouted, it wasn't whispered. It was declared with the calm authority of someone who had always been here, merely waiting for the right time to introduce herself. We all froze. John Bell dropped his spoon. Lucy's hands trembled in her lap. Betsy, wide-eyed, clutched her chair like it was the last solid thing in the world. But I listened. The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. It didn't echo from a hallway or drift down the stairs. It breathed from the very walls, from the air between our faces. And somehow, I knew this wasn't just a spirit. This was something else. After that night, she never stopped speaking. She answered questions, sometimes with biting sarcasm, sometimes with chilling honesty. She knew things no one should know. She told Lucy about a brooch she had lost in her youth, described it down to the small crack in the emerald stone. She repeated entire sermons that had been preached 3 counties away, word for word. She mimicked voices, especially John Bell's. Her impersonations were flawless, but when she did it, she twisted the tone, made it grotesque. One night, Lucy asked cautiously, "What do you want with us?" A long pause followed. Then Kate responded, almost sweetly, "John Bell must die. The rest of you may live to watch." The silence that followed was unbearable. I saw John stiffing, the blood draining from his face. The haunting was no longer aimless torment. It had direction, purpose. Kate had made herself clear, and John was the target. He began to weaken soon after. His voice faltered. His steps grew slow. His hands trembled with no cause. At first, they thought it was age, stress, some illness creeping up on him. But we knew. We saw this thing, this Kate, was draining him, piece by piece. She became crueler with time. During prayers, she would cackle. During meals, she'd knock plates from hands. At night, she whispered to the children in their own voices. One night, she spoke directly into my ear. "You don't believe in me, do you?" I turned around. "No one, but you will. Before you leave this house, you'll believe more than you ever wanted to." She was right. Even the reverends came, Bible in hand, righteous and defiant. They left pale and shaken. Some never returned. One preacher tried to cast her out. She laughed through his entire sermon, quoting scripture louder than him, backwards. When he poured holy water across the threshold, the house trembled. "You don't get it," she said, her voice low and cold. "I'm not trapped here. I chose this house." That was when I understood. This wasn't a spirit tied to unfinished business. This was something far older, something darker. It wasn't just haunting the Bell family. It was inhabiting them. And Kate had only just begun. Kate Batts. The name alone sent chills through everyone in town. She was no ordinary neighbor. There were whispers about her, dark rumors of witchcraft, curses, and old grudges that stretched back decades. Yet no one dared confront her openly, except the Bell family, who would come to know her secret in the most terrifying way. I first heard about Kate from the neighbors, long before she revealed herself as the voice haunting the house. They said she was bitter, angry, and had a way of making misfortune follow anyone who crossed her path. Some claimed she had made pacts with dark forces. Others said she was a woman who had lost everything to betrayal and now sought revenge from beyond the grave. One evening, as the taunting grew worse, I decided to confront the truth. I asked the old preacher, who had once tried to drive the spirits away, "Who is Kate Batts really?" He sighed, eyes clouded with fear. She was a woman scorned, a bitter soul who lived near the Bell farm 100 years before. She was accused of witchcraft, shunned and humiliated. Some say she cursed the Bells before she died, promising her spirit would never leave. That night, as Kate's voice echoed through the house again, I thought I heard a whisper beneath her words, something almost human. "Tell them my story." And so, I listened. Kate's story was one of betrayal. A woman who loved John Bell's grandfather, only to be rejected when a more suitable match appeared. She was humiliated publicly, her name dragged through the mud. It is said, she swore vengeance not only on the man, but on all his bloodline. Her death was sudden, mysterious. Some believed she was poisoned. Others said she died cursing the family. After she was gone, strange occurrences began around the Bell farm. Animals died without cause. Crops failed. and the family was plagued by misfortune. But it was more than just curses. Kate Bat's spirit was restless, jealous, and vengeful. Yes, but also deeply wounded. She wanted the Bells to suffer, as she had. She wanted them to know fear, helplessness, and pain. The truth was, Kate was bound to the land, to the house, and to the Bell family itself. Her secret was not just hatred. It was a longing for recognition, a dark plea that echoed through time. That night, as the voice whispered, "Remember me," I understood the haunting was more than a ghost story. It was a legacy of pain, a secret buried in history, kept alive by fear and sorrow. When news of the Bell Witch spread beyond the county, it caught the attention of many, but none more than Andrew Jackson, then a general, a man known for his fierce will and iron nerve. Some say he was skeptical, a man of action who believed only in what he could see and fight. Yet, curiosity drew him to the Bell farm, and with him came a promise to uncover the truth, or at least put an end to the madness. I remember the day Jackson arrived. The air was heavy, like before a storm. Locals gathered, whispering nervously. Would the famous general be the one to finally defeat the spirit that had tormented the Bells? Or would he too become another victim? Jackson was no stranger to danger. He stepped into the Bell household without hesitation. His eyes sharp and scanning, the family watched with a mix of hope and fear. If anyone could solve this, it was him. But the house had other plans. From the moment Jackson sat down, the haunting escalated. The candles around him sputtered and dimmed. Objects flew across the room, hitting walls with a violent crash. A cold wind swept through the house, though all windows were shut tight. Then, the voice of Kate Batts herself pierced the chaos. "So, the mighty Jackson comes. Are you here to save them, or to join them?" Jackson's voice was steady, but I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "I've faced men who wanted my death. I'm not afraid of ghosts." But Kate was relentless. She mocked him, imitated his voice, whispered his darkest fears back to him. At one point, a chair suddenly tipped, nearly striking him. The room fell silent, save for her chilling laugh, echoing like a death knell. That night, Jackson stayed, determined to face the spirit. But as he retired to rest, the torment continued. A shadow moved silently across the ceiling, and unseen fingers brushed his skin. He woke, heart pounding, sweat cold on his brow. "You cannot fight what you cannot see," Kate whispered into the darkness. In the morning, Jackson left the Bell farm with a grim expression. He never spoke much of what happened inside that house, but the locals say his usually fiery temper was subdued. A haunted look lingered in his eyes. Some even say the Bell Witch followed him home, unseen but ever present. The legend says that Jackson's visit was the closest the spirit ever came to breaking free of the Bell family, but that night sealed a bond, a dark pact between a man and a ghost, and I was there to witness every terrifying moment. The days leading up to my father's death were filled with a darkness so heavy, it felt like the very air we breathed had turned to poison. John Bell, once a towering figure of strength and resolve, was reduced to a shadow of himself. His skin grew pale and clammy, his breath shallow and ragged. His eyes, oh, those eyes, once sharp and commanding, now flickered weakly behind heavy lids, glazed and clouded, as if the light inside was slowly dying. I watched him struggle to lift his hands, trembling violently as if caught in an unseen vice, his fingers twitching uselessly. Then came the nights when he vomited blood, crimson staining the wooden floorboards, a cruel testament to the poison eating him from within. The house had fallen into a deathly silence, broken only by the faint rattling of his breath and the occasional groan of suffering. The warmth had fled, replaced by a chilling cold, that seeped into our bones. I remember sitting by his bedside, holding his frail hand, praying for mercy, for some sign that this nightmare might end. But the shadow that haunted us was not so easily appeased. One afternoon, while searching for any clue that might explain his sudden decline, I stumbled upon a small vial, hidden in a crevice beneath the floor. The glass was old, dust-covered, and cracked, but inside was a thick, dark liquid that smelled bitter and rancid. My heart pounded as I showed it to Kate Batts, the very name that sent a chill through my soul. She looked at me with a twisted smile, her eyes cold and calculating. "That," she whispered, "is what brought him low. I gave him the poison. The witch's spirit is not the only curse you face." Her words cut through me like a knife. Could a woman's hatred, alive and vicious, do what no spirit had managed? Was she the true darkness that consumed my father? The line between the supernatural and human evil blurred until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The funeral was held on a grim day, under skies as gray as the stones beneath our feet. Our neighbors gathered, their faces drawn and pale, eyes filled with sorrow and fear. As the coffin was lowered into the cold earth, a strange, oppressive silence fell over the church. We could almost hear the beating of our own hearts, each thump heavy with grief and dread. Then, from the shadows, came a sound that made the blood run cold. A low, sinister laughter that echoed off the walls like a cruel mockery of life itself. The voice was unmistakable, dripping with venom and triumph. "He has been punished," it hissed, reverberating through the stillness. "He has been punished." A shudder passed through everyone present, as if the very air had been poisoned by those words. The curse was no longer just a story told in whispers. It was real, alive, and it had claimed John Bell as its first victim. The witch's grip tightened, and none of us dared to believe that this was the end. That night, as I lay in the empty house, the walls seemed to close in around me. The shadows danced with malicious glee, and the air was thick with the promise of more suffering to come. The witch's laughter haunted the corners of every room, a cruel reminder that death was only the beginning. The weight in the house was unbearable. Even after Father's death, the presence never left us. Instead, it seemed to grow stronger, more sinister, like a shadow that clung tighter with every passing day. The nights were colder, the silence louder, and then the voice came again. It was Kate Batts's voice, sharp, cruel, and filled with a chilling promise that echoed through every corner of that cursed house. "I will return in 107 years, the year 1935, she whispered, her tone dripping with menace. I remember the room falling into a heavy silence after that. My mother's face was pale, her hands trembling as she clutched her rosary tightly. Why would she say that?" she asked, tears welling in her eyes. "What evil waits for us in the future?" No one dared answer. The house seemed to hold its breath, as if even the walls feared what was to come. In the years that followed, the Bell household's tormentors grew quieter, but they never vanished. The villagers spoke of strange sounds at night, faint footsteps in the woods, the rustling of dead leaves when no wind blew, whispers just beyond hearing. Some claimed to see flickering lights near the old Bell Witch Cave, a place avoided by even the bravest souls. Still, no one could deny that the witch's spirit haunted the land, as if her promise tethered her to this world, waiting for the appointed time to return. I would lie awake in the dark, heart pounding, wondering if I would live to see that day. Would she come back? What horrors would she bring? "I will return," the voice haunted me in dreams, "and your suffering will begin anew." It was a curse not just on our family, but on the very soil beneath our feet. And so, the years stretched on, carrying with them a silent dread, a warning whispered in the wind, that the Bell Witch's shadow was never truly gone. The years passed, and with them, the story of the Bell Witch grew into legend. But what was the truth behind the haunting? I spent countless nights pondering, questioning what I had lived through. Was it truly a spirit? A curse? Or was there something more human, more sinister at play? Some say it was real proof in the countless witness accounts, the independent testimonies from those outside our family who heard the strange noises, saw the moving objects, and felt the chilling presence that no one could explain. But others whispered of mass hysteria, a community gripped by fear and religious fervor, twisting the facts into a terrifying tale. They said that the strange events were a product of our own minds, a shared delusion fueled by superstition and panic. Then, there was the darker theory that the Bell Witch was a cover-up, a mask for something far worse. Some believe Betsy, my mother, suffered terrible abuse at the hands of those closest to her, hidden behind the story of a vengeful spirit. The bruises on my siblings, the strange behaviors were evidence of a secret pain no one dared to speak aloud. Others suggest that Father himself was not the innocent man we thought, that perhaps he was poisoned slowly, deliberately by someone we trusted. A family torn apart not by spirits, but by greed and betrayal. I do not know which is true. Perhaps all hold some truth, twisted and tangled through the decades. But what I do know is this: the fear, the suffering, the shadow that darkened our lives was real. And even now, when the wind howls through the trees, when the shadows shift just beyond the firelight, I cannot help but wonder what secrets remain buried beneath the surface. What truths have been lost to time. Even now, long after those dark days, the land where we lived remains touched by the shadow of the Bell Witch. The Bell Witch Cave stands as a silent witness to the horrors that once plagued our family. A place where visitors tread carefully, some hoping to catch a glimpse of the supernatural, others simply drawn by the legend. I remember stories of those who dared to take something from the cave, a rock, a piece of earth, only to be cursed with misfortune. Illness, accidents, strange happenings followed them, as if the land itself demanded respect, punishing those who disturbed its secrets. Tourists come in droves, hoping to feel the eerie presence, to hear the whispering winds that some claim carry the witch's voice. The cave tours recount the tales, from the laughter that echoed through the church after my father's death, to the promises of return, to the unexplained phenomena that still baffle. Books, movies, and countless retellings keep the legend alive, but none can truly capture the terror we endured, the cold grip of fear, the helplessness in the face of something beyond understanding. Sometimes I wonder, do you believe it? Do you believe in curses that span generations? In promises made from beyond the grave? In the shadows that linger just out of sight? The Bell Witch is more than a story. She is a warning, a dark reminder that some evils refuse to die. And if you dare to seek the truth, perhaps one day you'll hear her voice calling from the darkness.
Did you enjoy this content? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Support us with a like and subscribe so our channel can reach more people. Thanks for watching until the end.